If you're considering buying or selling a home in the next 6 months, it's crucial to understand the upcoming changes due to NAR's settlement. We've got a lot to talk about, and it's all coming up. Stay tuned. Hi, this is Warren Oberholser. I'm a realtor located in Northern California, San Francisco region, and more specifically in the East Bay Tri-Valley area. I cover numerous topics from preparing and marketing your home to sell, including negotiating with and for buyers. If this sounds interesting, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive in the new changes coming out from NAR's settlement. I'll discuss in detail how this affects both sellers and buyers. Make sure you stay to the end. I'll give you my bottom line on what I think these changes will do to the real estate market and a few pros and cons. Okay, let's get started. The National Association of Realtors has reached a tentative agreement on a class action lawsuit that introduces important changes to the residential real estate landscape. Here's a little backstory on the lawsuit. The National Association of Realtors, along with numerous residential real estate state associations, MLS boards, and brokerages were named in a class action lawsuit by some sellers. In mid-March of this year, a settlement was reached between all parties. However, they are still working out a few details on the settlement before the final court approval, including approval from the DOJ. Here are the changes and what the settlement has proposed to benefit both sellers and buyers. The National Association of Realtors has agreed to make major changes to how seller and buyer agents are compensated. The settlement bans compensation offers on the MLS and requires real estate agents to have a written agreement between themselves and the buyer. Okay, so what does all this mean? Basically, it has taken an outdated seller model that was handled through the MLS and modernized it to be more consumer-centric. Prior to the settlement, the seller and the listing agent would offer cooperative compensation or commission sharing to the buyer's real estate agent. This would be advertised or posted to the buyer's agent via the MLS. However, this information was never available to the buyer or the consumer on the MLS website. The compensation to the buyer was posted or noted in the agent confidential remarks, which again cannot be viewed by the public, which is where the buyer would see this. To resolve the issue, part of the tentative terms of the NAR settlement is no more cooperative compensation can be offered to the buyer's agent via the MLS. A seller can offer a concession to a buyer for closing costs, such as a credit to cover their agent's fee, but this must be written in the buyer's purchase agreement and, of course, agreed to by both parties. As I understand from this ruling, this will allow greater transparency to all parties when purchasing a home. I want to dive a little deeper on this. I'm going to discuss how this looks in California, since this is where I'm licensed. Again, the old cooperative compensation agreement, when a seller hired a broker to sell their home, they signed a listing agreement. This agreement includes a section for the broker's compensation, where the seller and listing agent agree on the commission amount for the listing agent's brokerage. It should be noted that the broker's commission has always been negotiated and is not fixed by law. In the old agreement, the seller could decide how much, if any, fee or commission would be paid to the buyer's agent. The buyer's brokerage fee or commission was subtracted from the total commission paid to the listing agent's brokerage. The big change and positive effect to the seller is the listing agreement. The cooperative compensation to the buyer will no longer be negotiated up front and included in the contract between the seller and the listing agent's brokerage. When a seller decides to hire a realtor to sell their home, the only compensation they agree to pay in the listing agreement is to the listing agent's brokerage. Here is the proposed advantage to the buyer. The settlement promotes greater transparency and buyer-broker commissions, helping the buyer understand exactly what their realtor is charging or expected to receive when a property closes. Previously, buyers were unaware of what their agent was paid by the seller and had no say in how much their agent should be compensated for their services. Under the new agreement from the settlement, buyers will enter into a contract with their agent before viewing properties. This contract will include a section outlining the fee for service, specifying how much the buyer's agent will be paid. This fee could be a flat rate or a commission based on the property sale. I need to point out that it has to be nailed down, so it can't be something that like a sliding scale, nor can the realtor say my commission is going to be 2.5%, and then they find out that the seller and listing agent could offer 3%. The buyer's agent can't then change or go back to the buyer and say, hey, look, can I have a little more money because the seller's offering that? What they go into contract for is what the buyer and the buyer's agent agree to. The buyer agent can reduce their compensation with their client, which is the buyer, but they cannot increase the amount that they originally agreed to. In this aggressive seller's market, with prices continuing to rise, as we see in the Tri-Valley area, it might seem unreasonable for buyers to now have to pay for an additional fee to cover their realtor. However, keep in mind that a seller always wants top dollar for their property. A proactive realtor, when taking a listing, should explain to their client or seller what the current real estate market looks like. The listing agent should have a detailed conversation with their seller to understand all the costs that come with purchasing a home and how these fees have increased significantly in just the past few years, especially with mortgage interest rates over 7% and the rising costs of property insurance. Here's my bottom line with a few pros and cons. I'm going to base this off my own personal experience of being a realtor in the Tri-Valley area for over 15 years. Once this takes effect, which at the time of making this video should be sometime in the middle of August, based on how the market has been performing for this year, it will basically be business as usual. Why do I say this? It is still an aggressive seller's market, and this lawsuit has been discussed in the local MLS boards and state associations since the beginning of this year. The tentative settlement began in March. I do not see any drastic changes or lowering of cooperative buyer's commission when I look at properties that are currently on the market. Another area to look at is what's going on nationally with the residential real estate market. Redfin's recent housing article stated the share of price reductions from home sellers increased to an 18-month high. Homes are also taking longer to sell on average compared to last year. All these metrics are pointing to softening home prices in the coming months. Meanwhile, the U.S. median sales price has reached a record high. As I stated earlier, sellers always want top dollar for their house. However, to bring the buyer to the closing table, they will still need to consider offering concessions to the buyer, which is paying for some or all the buyer's agent's commission. Here are the pros and cons. I'll start with the pros. I think the main positive from this is sellers and buyers now have to stay in their own lane with their realtor. With the new policy, both parties are aware of what they are expected to pay to their agent up front, which allows total transparency. Another positive with this arrangement is sellers and buyers now have the opportunity to negotiate on what, if any, the seller will pay to the buyer's agent commission. You may want to think of this as a term or contingency you find in the purchase contract. To be more competitive, the buyer may choose to shorten the time frame or release the contingencies up front when the contract is submitted. Now that the buyer's agent commission is negotiated, they may elect to request a reduced buyer's commission, or if the buyer is an investor who plans to flip the property, they may request no commission at all. Again, in the beginning, I think it's going to be business as usual, especially as we go through the end of this year. Here are some cons. At this time, my main concern or con is with the first-time home buyer, particularly the one who wants to finance using a government-backed loan. The most popular is FHA and VA. As I understand, NAR and the associated parties are still working out the details on how this will be handled in the settlement. As we experienced when we were trying to sell real estate a few years ago with the pandemic, there will be some growing pains and a learning curve for realtors to go through when adjusting to the new changes. Buyer and listing agents will need to do a better job communicating between each other and educating their clients. If you'd like to know more about these upcoming changes, whether you're planning to buy or sell, especially in the next 6 months, please feel free to reach out to me. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, post any questions or comments down below, and I'd love to know your feelings on the changes that are coming forward. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do so you don't miss anything. If you found this video interesting, you may want to watch these other two that are starting to pop up just about now. So stay tuned. I'll have more helpful videos like this coming soon. Please reach out to me for any questions you may have, and I wish you all the best on your home journey.